Урок психологии. Меня зовут Антон. Что ты делаешь, Валерия? Что ты делаешь? Дурак бедный. Oh, it's very bad. I tell you, do not play with matryoshka. You ruined my psychology lesson. Oh. Sorry. Sometimes you must scold there. They're very... They have own idea. But now, I like that song. Это хорошо. Это очень хорошо. But we have psychology to talk about. So, welcome back. We're going to talk about operant conditioning this time. And yes, we are. Here we go. Operant conditioning. What's the difference? There's a big difference between operant conditioning and classical conditioning. I'll put my dirty gloves on the table again. Leave my gloves alone too, you silly bear. Anyway, okay, so operant conditioning. Whoops. I need to unfreeze it. It is frozen. Here we go. Operant conditioning. Now, learning when behavior is affected by the consequences. This is important. This is kind of more like you would think of learning. If I stick my hand on a stove, just something sort of really simple like that. If I stick my hand on the stove, I go, ow! Even if it's not even hot. I have a weird thing about stoves. Okay, but normally when a stove is hot, you would stick your hand on there and go, ow! And you would say, okay, that sucked. I don't want to do that again. So what happens is you do an action, you have an action, and you have a consequence, and from the consequence you learn whether you should do that action again. So instead, if you come and put your hand on a stove and wonderful chocolate falls from the heavens, okay, that would be cool. I'd be hanging around that stove all the time. You learn from the consequence. And so anyway, so that's the idea. Now remember, with classical conditioning, this is not the case because it's an involuntary behavior. You're conditioned. You don't really choose to drool. You choose to put your hand on the stove or not again, depending on what you've learned the consequences are. Now this is a far more useful type of conditioning than the classical conditioning. You can't really use it for much at all. But this is the type of conditioning you do when you train your dog, when you train horses, when your parents give you a consequence, now you're getting a consequence. This is the whole idea. And so it's still a very valid sort of, the idea of operant conditioning is still very valid in how we teach people. It hasn't become untrue that this is a process of learning. What's untrue really is the claim that the behavioralists said, all of our learning, everything is based on this. We don't care about internal processes at all, what's going on in the head. We just want to see the behavior. And that is where they mess up, where they're wrong. The internal processes are incredibly important, and we do carry more with us from birth than the simple three poop, cry, and eat reflexes. But anyway, so let's go on. It kind of starts with Watson, but the real important, I'm not going to talk about Watson. The real important figure in here is B.F. Skinner. And B.F. Skinner is kind of, I guess you could say, if Freud is the grandfather of modern psychology, B.F. Skinner is certainly the grandfather, father, whatever, of classical conditioning. He's the important figure that got this into the forefront. And he became very, very well known. And there's there's older ones, but one of the vids that I'm going to link in the description to this vid is showing Skinner, and he's doing his thing with pigeons. Anyway, so these are some videos here that I'm going to put into the YouTube links. They're showing different examples of things that have happened with operant conditioning. Okay? And so I'm not going to talk about them right now. We're going to use those as basis for discussion in the actual discussion, in-class discussion that we have. I think I may need to split this up into 2 lessons or something like that. I'm not really sure. Okay, but watch all 3 of these vids. You'll see they're pretty cool. There's some things with rats. You probably didn't know that rats could play basketball. Rats can play basketball. Not really with a 10-foot thing, though. That's even a bit much for a rat. But they actually have rat basketball competitions in colleges. Sound crazy? Well, maybe it is. Anyway, classic and operant. Sorry, there's some Swedish there for you. It means classic and operant. I like to leave it there. It's good to learn some Swedish, even though I speak in Russian before. I don't really speak Russian. I just know a little bit. Swedish I speak. Anyway, important differences between classic and operant conditioning. In classical conditioning, you need to know this. You need to know this. You need to know this. In classic conditioning, when an organism learns an association between two, like the ears on my hat, between two stimuli. In operant conditioning, an organism learns an association between a behavior and a consequence. It's very, very different. Classical condition focuses on conditioned behavior. Operant condition focuses on voluntary behavior. Most of everything we do as human beings are voluntary behavior. Okay, we may, if somebody is eating a big chocolate mousse pie in front of you and you're hungry and they also have a big yummy pizza, your mouth might water a little bit and you're not really controlling that. But I mean, we don't really act very much at all on involuntary behavior. Our behavior is voluntary. Most animals' behavior is voluntary. So, if you teach your dog to sit, your dog is choosing to sit. If you teach him to roll over, your dog is choosing to roll over. And so that's the important type of learning, the teaching. But so those are important. You've got to understand those differences. You won't understand the difference between operant and classical conditioning unless you understand those. And really, that's a really, really critical one. So if I were to ask you, something like that on a test at some point in time, well, that's the answer. And so, okay. Anyway, operant condition. 3 things are needed. 3. First, you need an antecedent. That complicated word sometimes seems to throw people. An antecedent is nothing more than a stimulus that exists before the behavior. For instance, a hot stove. A hot stove would be an antecedent. All right? The behavior. The thing you do. You touch the hot stove. The consequence. Ow! Ai! Fy fan! Det gör ont! Okay? So that's the consequence. So what happens is you create an association between a behavior and a consequence. You create an association between trying to stick your mouth on the electric fence and the consequence of getting a sort of massive shock through your brain. You create the consequence of, of eating a lemon. I mean, the behavior of eating a lemon, the consequence of it's sour and it's gross. So you don't really want another lemon. So it's a behavior and a consequence. Behavior and a consequence. This is really, really important. And this is what happens with your dog. I mean, you shouldn't ever bash your dog on the head. That's not really going to help him much. But if a dog is going to learn tricks, when he doesn't do it, you don't bash him on the head. When he does do it, you reward him. So the dog is starting to learn an association between the behavior of rolling over and getting a yummy treat. So once they understand that if they roll over, they get a yummy treat, they'll continue to roll over. And you always want to reward them. You don't have to give them a yummy treat every time. I mean, later after they do the tricks, you can pat them on the head, say, good dog, they like that too. That's a reward for a dog, being part of the group and being, accepted and being liked. And so those are the types of things. And I mean, and if you look at things, I'll put there's some dog agility links and stuff. I'll put some stuff out like that. And if you're going to look at the things that, horses to be able to do this, not really sure how that made it to the Olympic sport, and baseball didn't, but anyway. I mean, if you're going to be able to train, horse, we're small, horses are big. Horses don't have to do what we want them to do. I mean, if you're saying, step like this, horse is like, and if you push it, the horse can go kick, and you've got a big old concussion. So, but horses do that thing because we've trained them and a reward system to be able to get things that they want when they do the things that we want them to do. And so, anyway, positive reinforcement is when a behavior is, and these are important. You've got to understand these: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment. They're three different things. Three different things. Positive reinforcement. When a behavior is reinforced via a stimulus after the response. You can think of it as a reward, basically. Like if you give your dog a treat, that's a positive reinforcement. He is being given something which he sees as positive. Dogs love food. Food is positive. Old dogs love food. If there's any truth to anything, dogs love food. So they seem to be always hungry for what you're eating. They might not want their crunchies in the bowl, but they're always hungry for what you're eating. And so, anyway, so the stimulus is therefore called a positive reinforcer. Try to think of some positive reinforcers. I would ask you that question. But you can think of them in your sort of digital world right now. Well, I don't know if your world's digital or not. Matter of fact, you might not even exist. That's a TOK sort of thing, but still. Assuming you exist, think of some positive reinforcers. Like a paycheck is a positive reinforcer. Like a accommodation, like a special mention, a bonus. Why do they give workers bonuses for good jobs? Well, that's a positive reinforcement to get them to work hard. That type of stuff. An A grade on one of your essays or in the final grade in class. Positive reinforcer for hard work. Okay. There are primary and secondary reinforcers. A primary reinforcer is something which the organism needs, like dogs need food. That's a primary reinforcer. Secondary reinforcers are things that we don't directly need, like money. We need money, but you can't really do anything with money itself. I mean, you can eat it, but it probably tastes horrible. But you can use it to do things you want to do that you do need, like buy food and clothes and fun and that kind of stuff. So that's the difference. Okay. Oh, I just said that. So a primary reinforcer is something an organism naturally needs. Secondary reinforcers are things that reinforce through association with primary reinforcers, like good grades. I mean, you don't really necessarily need a good grade for anything. I mean, the grade itself just sits there and it doesn't have any utilitarian value or pragmatic value. I mean, you can't really do anything with it. It's just a paper thing with a number or with a letter on it. But at the same time, that allows you to do things which are important to you, like get into college and later get a job in which you get money and so on and so forth. And so those are secondary reinforcers. Okay? Now, reinforcement and punishment. You've got to know. This is what Vladimir will get if he messes with matryoshka one more time. Do not you leave matryoshka alone, Vladimir. Нет. Не хорошо. Что ты делаешь? Ты знаешь. I'm sorry I had to be mean to Vladimir, but anyway, so negative reinforcer. A reinforcer that is a response that is reinforced by the removal of a negative stimulus. This is not a punishment. Now, what kind of things? Why do I have an angry mom? Angry mom. Angry mom. Why do I have angry mom up there? Okay. Now, let's say that your mom tells you, you got to clean up your room. Clean up your room. I'm working all day. You got to do the dishes. At least empty the dishwasher and put the dirty dishes back in. Okay? You got to do that. You're home all day. I know you got school, but when you have your break, empty the dishwasher. Put dirty dishes back in. Clean your room. And so you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And you don't do it. All right? You're like, you just blow it off. Because, I don't know, you're playing video games or there was some good stuff on TikTok. All right, anyway. So what does she gets home and she yells at you. She's like, what are you doing? I've been working from 7 in the morning till 6 at night. What are you doing? I told you to do things, blah, 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 blah. And very likely rightfully so, but, and so eventually you say, okay, I'll do it, fine. You just don't want to get nagged at, fine. I mean, you're not getting hit, you're not anything, you're taking away a negative thing that you don't like. So she gets you to do what the response she wants she takes away, if you take away the nagging, then, she'll stop nagging when you do the thing. So it's a negative reinforcement. It reinforces you to do something. It gets you to do something, but the reason you're doing it is because you want to stop a negative thing. Think about it as your alarm when you wake up. You're like, oh, just make it stop. I'll get up. Another one is the little annoying peep if your smoke detector goes out. Beep. And you're like, which one was it? And you go to listen to that one. And it goes, beep, over there. And you go, damn it, man. And you go over to that one, and it goes, beep, over here. But anyway, whatever the case is, you want to change it so it stops that annoying peep. So you just change out the batteries in every single one of them, which it probably needs anyway, and then the peep stops. So it's getting you to do something. You do something, you're reinforced by taking away a negative thing. And that is negative reinforcement. It is not punishment. And the difference between punishment, the difference between punishment I'll get into right now. I can put those there. Stimulus is called a negative reinforcement, so you have a moment to see it. But remember, you've got the PowerPoint to follow along with, so that works pretty well. Okay? Punishment, a response is weakened by the consequence of the behavior. Punishment is like you think of a punishment, but the point of a punishment is to get you to not do something. The point of negative reinforcement is to get you to do something. But punishment, like you're driving fast. Just watch Fast and Furious 218. This is the year, well, it'll probably be year 2022 because they make about 84 of those movies each year. So this is Fast and Furious 2018. And you're just driving back to the movie theater. And a cop stops you and says, yo, dude, you're driving too fast. And he gives you a ticket for $400. And so that's a punishment. The point of the ticket is to get you to stop driving fast. It's not to encourage you to do something. Well, it's to encourage you to drive the speed limit, but it's a punishment to stop you from driving fast. And so that is that kind of thing. Or walking into an electric fence. It's a punishment. You don't walk in here. That's what they do to the sheep. Cows. The cows, God, those things are dumb, man. Cows are, eventually they figure it out, but it takes them a while. I've seen cows walk into an electric fence like a dozen times in a row and look equally confused every time. Eventually something happens and they get it. But anyway, so response cost. A behavior is weakened by the taking away of a stimulus the organism sees as positive. Okay? So you can also have a punishment by taking away something you like. Like, for instance, you get grounded. You like to go do things with your friends. Okay? Or you like to use your parents' car. Okay, let's use that one instead. You like to use your parents' car. And so they say, all right, you can use the car, but you've got to fill it up with gas. This is not an unreasonable request. You've got to fill it up, but you've got to replace the gas that you use. Go ahead and use the car, but replace the gas. So you bring the car home. It was on full. You bring it back in a quarter tank. Not filled up. Your dad's or your mom's got to go to work the next day. And they're like, oh my God, I am so angry. And so what do they say to you next time? You say, oh, Dad, can I use the car? And they're like, no, you can't use the car. You didn't fill up with gas. Well, I'll give you some money. That's not the point. I have money. The point is I don't want to have to rush through the gas station to do it when I have to go to work. Okay, so that's, that kind of a discussion. And so the response cost, the behavior of not filling up the gas is weakened. You get a punishment because they're taking away something you like. It's like you being grounded or something like that. Okay? Any examples? Well, I just gave you some. I would have asked for some in class. But those are the types of things, and think of some others on your own. I might actually ask a question about something like that when we have our in-class discussion for this lesson. Okay, so let me see how much time I've gone on this. Okay, I'm going to see how many more slides I have on here. I only have a couple, I think. You know what? No, I think that's going to do it for today, for this lesson. My bear is getting hungry again, and, I'm afraid he'll eat me because I've scolded him rather harshly. So now, musica. Da. Musica. Меня нравится music. Очень хорошо. So, Cossack Patrol. Sounds good. Давай. Медленно. Давай.